One of the largest hospitals in India, AIIMS, has had a breakdown of servers for the last 10 days. This has meant the queues of patients outside AIIMS has become even longer. Every process that is computerized has to be done by hand, including admitting patients, discharging patients, billing, generation of reports, lab tests, scheduling appointments. The nightmare of paperwork is unimaginable. But frankly, that's not the story. 10 days later, it's becoming clear that this is not some random server failure. This is a conspiracy, a cyber attack, and as per sources, this could have emanated from China. Are we seeing the impact of cyber warfare on AIIMS? So what has happened today? Let's begin with that. AIIMS servers are down for the 10th consecutive day. Access to patient data and devices have been compromised. As per sources, hack and ransomware attack is likely from China. Sources are also telling us that data could have been sold on the dark web. We're also learning that forensic analysis of impacted servers are underway. They could begin over the next few days in phases. Now, another important statement that came today was from MOS of Information Technology, Rajiv Chandrasekhar. He made it clear that it was a conspiracy planned by forces that are pretty significant. He goes on to say it is, in fact, a sophisticated ransomware attack. Why is this worrisome? If this attack has indeed seen a data breach that has been sold on the dark web, that means data of all the VIP patients. And this is the who's who of Indian public life who go to AIIMS, including prime ministers, past and present, has been breached. Medical records of blood donors, healthcare workers are all out there. 3 to 4 crore patients' data has been breached. Clearly, cyber warfare is here to stay. Let me just take you through some of the attacks that have taken place just this year. This month alone, a few days ago, Pope Francis's website in the Vatican is hacked after he's criticized Russia over the Russia-Ukraine war. In November, the European Union's Parliament website is hacked after EU has designated Russia a state terror sponsor. In May this year, SpiceJet servers were facing a ransomware attack. This impacted services across the country. Razorpay saw 7.3 crore rupees stolen from 831 transactions over 3 months. That's a financial transaction service. In August, cyber war was seen amidst Russia's Ukraine invasion when Ukraine's state nuclear power plant was targeted by Russian hackers. So it goes on and on. Clearly, this has become the new normal when it comes to attacking another country. But what's happening in the AIIMS case? Let me go across to Bhavtosh, who's joining us live. He's been tracking the story very, very carefully. Now, Bhavtosh, there's a whole group of agencies that has descended on this case, of course, and they're trying to fix it. They're also trying to figure out what happened. Is the Chinese link now becoming clearer?
Tamanna, yes, more or less, it's very clear that hackers from China had, in fact, infected the server of NIC, which is there in AIIMS. There are 5 servers at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and 4 of them were infected with the ransomware. And this happened last Wednesday at around 6:45 in the morning. And subsequent to that, as you rightly said, that servers are still down. Around 400 to 500 computers were infected with this ransomware, and multiple agencies are working to make sure that such attacks don't take place. Remember, it was in April 2000 that Interpol for the first time alerted all its 195 member nations about a possible organized crime syndicates carrying out these ransomware attacks. That happened just before the COVID outbreak, and they had in fact said that such attacks can take place on hospitals, and this could lead to loss of medical records, data, patients' records, and other information. Now, what we have further learned from our sources in Delhi Police is that an attempt is being made to sell this data, this private data, as well as information with doctors on dark web. Now, that's the reason why the servers are still down, because of precautionary reason. The data is not being, the servers are not being, in fact, being up by the agencies, and they have said that the cyber unit of the Delhi Police is closely working with the forensic experts from Ahmedabad, as well as with other federal probe agencies like NIA.
Thank you so much for that, Bhavtosh. So that investigation will go on. Of course, we'll get to the bottom of it. And there will be steps taken to ensure that we are safer the next time round. But how do we know where the next attack is going to be? Maroof Raza is joining me on the show this evening. Group Consulting Editor, Times Network. Sri Parthasarathy, cybersecurity expert, is speaking with us. I'm speaking with Colonel Dinny, defense expert, and Amit Dubey, national security expert and crime investigator on cyber forensics and ethical hacking. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us this evening on the show. Let me begin with you, Mr. Parthasarathy, and your take of what has happened in AIIMS. Clearly, there's an attempt to not blow this up in the media and in the public view. We're still trying to figure out what's happening, but is it becoming clear that this is no coincidence? This is no, everyday garden variety server breakdown?
I think if you take the range of incidents that have been happening in the cyber world throughout, if I take just 2022, the incidents that you just laid out, just a few of them, but I think there are significantly more incidents worldwide. And this essentially is becoming very, very prominent in terms of ransomware. But I think when you really look at ransomware and what is happening here, I think it's very easy to primarily point out to a lot of other sources and say that is where essentially it's coming from an organized perspective. I think one thing that we need to start looking at internally is essentially, I think it is the responsibility of every CISO to say, hey, am I doing everything to prevent a threat? Am I monitoring all of my particular data, all of my particular endpoints? And today, when you talk of endpoints that you're really looking at from a hospital perspective, there are significant things, right? In terms of the hospital, its extended network, the pharmaceutical companies, all of who basically have access to its network. So pretty much essentially you are letting in many organizations in. So it's a question of, as a nation, we need to start looking at it. While AIIMS may not be shown as a critical infrastructure, but it's still a very strategic agency.
To understand why AIIMS,
national perspective.
But
so
that's the thing. I'm trying to understand why AIIMS. Maroof, let me come to you on this. Why AIIMS?
Messaging. Tamanna, you see, cyber attacks are about messaging by your adversary. Now, assuming it is China, because a couple of things have happened in the last several years. China has a very, very active and aggressive cyber policy. It has a unit which is called numbered 61398, and that is one of the units which is globally feared to be able to enter many a system. So you see, if you remember, I think it was last year that Mumbai faced a cyber attack, and in parts of Mumbai, there was no electricity for some time.
Yes.
Clearly, it is very difficult to nail the person or the agency or the country that has initiated a cyber attack, because that's the nature of cyber attacks. It goes through many routes, and you will spend a lifetime trying to find out where it has come from. What is better to do is to prepare for the next set of threats. Now, the problem with all across the world, it's not just India. We are lax, no doubt, but all across the world, even America faces trillions worth of cyber attacks, and the big area of cyber attackers is medical information, medical hospitals, and data that they can acquire, because that has multiple spin-offs from medical firms and what they can sell to various people in terms of medicines, to the blackmailing factor when you have information about VVIPs and you're able to identify, say, for hypothetically, what's the lifespan of the leader of a country. So there are various initiatives. Now, the problem is that we always go by minimum compliance-driven initiatives. Ye to karna hi hai because the auditors will come and tell us off, so let's do it. This is something that has to change. It has to be top down. It can't be bottom up. Yes, the basic employee is a defaulter across the board because they get suckered into all sorts of information, which is called phishing, P-H-I-S-H-I-N-G. And that information tries to track down who to target and enter a system from. And Indians are known to be higher in providing personal information than anybody else in the world.
But this is not an individual. Maroof, are you talking about an individual? No, are you saying this could have started with an individual giving in information? This is a whole entity, an
Exactly.
organization that seems to be weak.
Tamanna, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that is one route of entering.
Okay.
The other route is more sophisticated. They can come top down, because what they do is they throw in various messages into your security system. What begins to crumple, they will then re-message in a way that your experts following the standard operating procedures can't put it up. So I don't think the AIIMS crisis is going to finish tomorrow. It's going to probably last a week or more, and they will have to get more servers in place and reroute information, get all the manpower that we have in the country to put in more and more data into the system so that we have a parallel database system which is available. Now, please remember, AIIMS, I'm told, has an offline database and an online database. So the offline database in a more secure system can be quickly uploaded. So a hassle that many a patient which is already facing could go by. The second thing is we need to also have the top management across the board in the country make a serious intervention and investment in cyber security. This is not to be left to some chief security officer, because he's going to be scrambling for information like anybody else. You need external experts. You need people to come in to suddenly tell you that what are must-dos, not could-dos, but must-dos. And once you begin to do that, you will begin to crumble out of the mess that you are in. It's not going to be easy. And I feel sorry for AIIMS patients, their relatives, and everybody else who's in the queue.
You know, I'm actually, that's an important point you've touched upon, Maruf,
Tamanna,
because...
my last point,
yeah.
China's stated policy now over the last 3 years or more is they are not embarrassed to say they will do cyber attacks. They've gone on record to say, we have the capability, we'll do it when we want to. Secondly, China has an unrestricted warfare strategy, which is not fighting on the LAC, but they are going to hit you where it hurts, your economy, your database, and your people.
Warfare is not restricted anymore to the air, to the land. This is the new frontier. And Maruf was talking about what people have suffered. We spoke with patients outside AIIMS earlier this week. Just listen in to their plight.
उनका ऑपरेशन हो चुका सब कुछ, अब उन्हें दिखाना था। वीरवार और शुक्रवार का उनका टाइम है, डॉक्टर बैठते हैं। लेकिन पिछले जुलाई में आए थे, 24 तारीख को वो वापस चले गए। 30 तारीख को तो सर्वर डाउन हुआ। आज मुझे फिर ड्यूटी छोड़ के आना पड़ा अपनी, मैं गार्ड में हूँ।
तो आज हो पाया इलाज या
नहीं हो पाया। मना कर रहे, बोले अपॉइंटमेंट नहीं है तो डॉक्टर नहीं देखेंगे। और
परसों मेरी हालत इतनी ख़राब थी, इमरजेंसी में हम आए थे 12:30 बजे। इन लोगों ने इतने धक्के खिलाए, यहाँ जाओ वहाँ जाओ, कुछ नहीं, बस एक टैबलेट दे दी बुखार उतारने की बस।
अगर अपॉइंटमेंट के बोल रहे हैं तो ये रेफर कर रहे हैं हर जगह पे, इधर उधर भगवा रहे हैं और कुछ नहीं।
क्या बोल रहे हैं, मैनुअली तो मिल रही है?
मैनुअली मिल रही है बट दे तब ना, अगर मैनुअली मिल रही होती तो कहीं और रेफर नहीं कर रहे होते ना। ये
22 तारीख के लिए मैं आया था, तो उसके लिए रिपोर्ट दी थी। उसका सर्वर डाउन चल रहा है बता रहे हैं, तो उसकी रिपोर्ट नहीं मिली है, और तो बस यही चल रहा है।
This is how people are actually suffering. Colonel Dinny, my thought is today's AIIMS, what could it be tomorrow? Would we be very short-sighted and myopic if we think that this is the beginning and the end of a possible, cyber warfare?
Absolutely not, ma'am. I think I'll take off from where Maruf sir has just left off. That, first and foremost, this particular attack, which is cyber attack, this is definitely not just a mere ransomware attack. I think it comes into the, into the domain of cyber terrorism. That's why we can call it a cyber terrorism, because it is intimidating people. Now, the very purpose of cyber warfare is mainly three. Number one, or this kind of attack is done for in an operation is for three reasons. First is as a geostrategic signaling, during conflict between two nations. Second, it could be a part of support of an influence operations. And third, it also could be, as an initiator to start any kinetic operations. Here, I think the second reason which I said, as part of a support of influence operations, and that is where this clipping which you had shown just before my statement. This is what exactly if at all this is being done by China, and we have strong reasons to believe that they would be doing it, is to create a kind of sense of frustration among the people, so that they start believing that the system cannot help them in any way. These kind of helplessness is what they're trying to do, and that kind of influence operations we have seen in the anti-CA riots and the farmers' riots and such like things. If I just see after Galwan, if what all kind of cyber attacks have happened, it'll give us further clarity on this. Let's say in October 2020 there was a Mumbai power attack which happened, which almost 10 to 12 hours there were no rail which was there. There was nothing which was happening in Mumbai. Then in February 2021, I think the Times Group itself was targeted because they were covering the Indo-China border issues quite in a very the way it should be covered. Then in March 2021, the vaccine manufacturing units of India, basically the Bharat Biotech, they were targeted. Now in July 2021, the UIDAI, the Aadhaar, the database, they were targeted. In April 2022, this year, Ladakh power grid was targeted. Now, if you see all these things, they all may not be critical infrastructure, but they're all strategic in nature. And therefore, if you see that it is definitely with a plan, with an intent, which like what Maru sir said, that it is not a amateur doing it; it is a professional doing it with a purpose. And I believe that purpose is to create a sense of total lack of faith in our system, so that people come onto the street, and then the protest potential of the population comes out, and that's what we have been seeing for the last few years, what they're trying to do. So this is definitely not the first and the last case. We should expect more such things in the future too.
Okay, so what are the preparations that we can make is the question then. Amit Dubey is with us. He's a national security expert. Mr. Dubey, in the AIIMS context, was AIIMS a soft target? Perhaps there were very clear loopholes there.
Tamanna, first we need to understand that such kind of sophisticated attack does not happen instantly. There are sequence of steps that has to conduct first to finally compromise a system like this. First they do reconnaissance, then they do the scanning, and then identifying the vulnerabilities, and then identifying the attack vectors through which they can exploit a vulnerability. So there were sequence of such attempts, those have been happening, and we can actually detect any such attempt proactively, but it didn't happen, and that shows that we were ignorant, we were not focused to do any sort of a regular monitoring of our systems. Though if you go to the breach forums, you will identify that there are tons of healthcare systems or hospitals those were hacked in last 6 months. Their database is already available on those forums. So these kind of indications are already there. These kind of reports are already there that healthcare systems in India, they are
Why
target.
healthcare systems? Why health? And you're absolutely right. A lot of healthcare systems have been targeted recently. I'm trying to understand why healthcare systems.
See, so you need to understand the psychology of a state-sponsored actor. They don't do it for money. They do it to actually break the trust of any organization, of a country, because India being treated as a healthcare service provider to the world, and lots of people from out of India also, they visit to AIIMS to take those kind of services. So AIIMS has a very high credibility in international healthcare domain. I think that has to be targeted first. So their intention was, and otherwise you can also say that normally the ransom amount that has been asked for such kind of attacks, that is moderate, that is 50 to 100 CR. But here it is 200 CR because they know that even if you pay the ransom, they may not give you the decryption key. So they have eventually capped it so high that you pay that money, they'll not give you the decryption key, so you will lose money as well. And even though you will not be solving your issue. So there are two aspects of it. First of all, we need to, so that shows that it is a state-sponsored attack, because their intention was not just to make money, which is otherwise we see in a normal hacker's perspective. Here they want to actually break the trust, the credibility of a country. I think that has been targeted. Second, yes, you are right. There were sequence of vulnerabilities. Because of that, it has been successful. Actually yesterday I was analyzing the websites and email IDs those were mentioned on AIIMS contact list. Many of these email IDs were already hacked in many a times, and their passwords are already out. Many of their doctors and responsible people, they were using their personal email IDs for official communication. Those are mentioned on their website. Now, these are small vulnerabilities. This can lead to such kind of serious attacks eventually, because if you are using your personal email ID for official communication, you are actually exposing lots of things for such risk. So I'm sure there were multiple such risks. Those were there, those were ignored. And we were also informed through various other agencies that Indian healthcare systems are under radar. They'll have continuous attacks. Those have happened. We have seen. You can see on the website of Breach Forum that there
Well,
are.
that makes it pretty clear, Mr. Dubey. That makes it pretty clear. So healthcare systems are attacked because it breaks the trust of people. It actually causes huge distress, and an institution like AIIMS, which is prestigious, then gets targeted. Because then the question comes to mind, Mr. Parthasarathi, why is it taking so long? 10 days? It's been 10 days, and it's going to take longer. So there has been an attack. There has allegedly been a demand for 200 crores, which the authorities have officially denied. I think I should say that. But why is it taking us so long to get back on our feet?
One of the key things to note is essentially in these kind of attacks, what one fails to understand is essentially there are what you call as advanced persistent threats. That means essentially a hacker does not attack just essentially for getting the ransom, but he is actually embedding himself into the system so that from a long-term perspective, he can actually cause disruption to that. So that is one. Second is essentially when you're looking at this entire range of servers that you have, doing a complete analysis, forensic analysis, one is essentially what you call as immediate response. Other is what you call as recover, and which is essentially how you build the resilience of an infrastructure. And recovery in this particular case, unless they have backups of all data, unless they have clean backup of all kind of data, then restoration of that essentially takes a long time in terms of restoring those particular systems. And which is one of the reasons why organizations, when they build resilience in their infrastructure, they build what you call as demilitarized zones in terms of the entire infrastructure so that they can protect some critical data and other thing in that particular aspect. And then rest of it essentially, which essentially the profiling of the data where essentially it may not be very high profile, they allow it even
so my
if it gets
question,
compromised.
sir, why is it taking so long?
I didn't get you.
Why is it taking so long to get the servers back up? 10 days and counting.
Can't hear you.
Okay, we'll try and reconnect with your audio and come back to you with that question. Maruf Raza, there has been an attack, but then the question is how quickly can you get back up on your feet? And that seems to be the puzzling point over here. Why is it taking so long? And is it a glaring pointer to how India needs to really ramp up her defenses when it comes to cyber attacks?
It's a very good question, Tamanna. You see, because, well, we boast to the world that we are an IT superpower. Our IT superpower should be able to be better prepared to deal with cyber attacks and better prepared to respond. While you are hit, just get up and start running again. And one way out is to create a massive backup base. And that backup base has to be in organizations, investments have to be made. Please understand, much of our businesses, our banking, everything is linked to cyber attacks. I hate to say it, today it's the medical system, and one of the things the Chinese take joy in is making you eat humble pie. For long after the COVID, we kept talking about how India has become the vaccine provider to the world and our vaccines are better than the Chinese. And so we are sort of, medical tourism and what have you. And suddenly they've exposed your underbelly. Next, you boast of anything else, they will hit you there. So one of the things our friends in the media need to be a little wary about is not to be too self-congratulatory, because your adversary, like the Chinese, is watching you and is going to hit you there. Secondly, we must understand that we need to actually get around to doing certain things which are unpleasant to people. For example, being a democracy, we value our freedom and freedom of speech. But when you work in organizations which are highly strategically sensitive, you need to be willing to sacrifice some freedoms. As Colonel Dinny and I think Mr. Dubey had also brought out, people were using personal IDs. Now, sorry, that's not on. You're probably aware recently in the interim government of Liz Truss. In the UK, their Home Secretary, the Home Ministry equivalent, resigned because she had sent a few mails from her personal ID. Now, whether that was a farce for her to get out to get re-elected as Home Secretary, or whether it was a general error, I don't know. But the fact is that there are codes that have to be followed. And the final point I wish to make is that, we have the capacity also to hurt our adversaries. Only we have been very decent by many halves, and we are not proactive, but we are defensive. It's a rule that we learned on the sports field in schools, that the best aspect of defense is to go on the offense. So I remember a Home Secretary saying in a conference years ago, about 10 years ago, that we ward off hundreds and sometimes thousands of attacks regularly on government websites. The government has the responsibility not just to secure the government's website, but to secure websites that matter to India in general, the people.
Absolutely.
And these websites need funding.
Another aspect, and you spoke about whenever India touts its achievements, they become more vulnerable. I think that's an interesting point. If you look at the recent spate of loan app scams, and many of them linked to Chinese companies, Chinese loan app scams, while India is talking about its prowess in digital lending and in digital currency. So these are things to keep in mind. We'll wrap it here, but it's really distressing that such an attack has happened. There isn't enough information about it yet. We've had the first clues today to confirm a suspicion that this is definitely a conspiracy. It's a larger, sophisticated attack. It isn't some hacker sitting somewhere trying to get 200 crores out of AIIMS. It's a bigger force at play.